Sosuke Aizen is widely regarded as one of the greatest anime villains of all time. His influence extends far beyond his screen time or raw power. He redefined the archetype of the antagonist. Unlike many villains who rely on brute force or personal grudges, Aizen operates through intellect, manipulation, and strategic foresight. Every action he takes is calculated, and every event he orchestrates is part of a decades-long plan. From his first appearances, Aizen presents a calm, polite, and almost forgettable demeanor, which makes his eventual betrayal all the more shocking. This contrast between appearance and reality creates a tension that few characters in anime can match. He doesn't merely fight his enemies, he outthinks them, controls their perceptions, and reshapes the environment around them. In this way, Aizen doesn't just participate in the story, he dominates it. Aizen's calmness is more than a personality trait. It's a weapon. By presenting himself as approachable and loyal, he gains the trust of everyone around him, including his peers and subordinates. His intelligence allows him to predict human behavior with near-perfect accuracy. While others are guided by fear, ambition, or emotion, Aizen is guided by pure logic and an unshakable belief in his superiority. He views rules, authority, and even the concept of fate as limitations designed to restrain weaker beings. In his mind, the only natural law is power, and he intends to wield it to its fullest. This approach makes him terrifying, not because he's unpredictable, but because he is always several steps ahead. By the time his enemies realize the scope of his plans, it is already too late. What makes Aizen particularly remarkable is that his villainy is philosophical. He doesn't seek chaos for its own sake, nor does he crave revenge. Instead, he seeks perfection and transcendence, aiming to restructure the world according to his vision. He challenges the very nature of reality and authority in the Bleach universe, particularly the power of the Soul King. Aizen's ambition is so vast that he doesn't just aim to control others, he aims to surpass gods themselves. This combination of intellect, patience, and philosophical depth sets him apart from virtually all other antagonists. He breaks conventional storytelling rules by being simultaneously omnipotent, manipulative, and chillingly composed. As a result, Aizen isn't just a villain. He's a narrative force capable of altering the entire story's trajectory. Aizen also represents inevitability. In many ways, the structure of Bleach is built around the shadow of his influence. Characters are constantly reacting to the consequences of his manipulations, even when he is not present. This creates a sense that the world itself is a stage designed for him, where opponents struggle not against him directly, but against the consequences of his foresight. His mastery over perception, environment, and human behavior establishes him as a figure who operates above conventional conflict. Every battle he participates in is more than a fight. It is an exercise in control, planning, and foresight. This is a rare quality in anime villains, making him a character whose presence fundamentally changes how the story is told. Finally, Aizen's brilliance lies in his subtlety. Unlike villains who boast their power or reveal their plans prematurely, he waits patiently, letting others overestimate themselves. This patience amplifies his threat, as even seasoned opponents fail to anticipate his moves. His calm, composed exterior masks the immense danger beneath, creating a sense of dread and inevitability whenever he appears. By combining intellect, patience, and absolute confidence in his superiority, Aizen becomes not just a character to fear, but a concept, a villain who transcends typical narrative rules. In this sense, Aizen doesn't just exist in Bleach, he dominates it, and that domination is what earns him the title of a villain who truly broke anime. Aizen's early life is almost entirely unknown, and this ambiguity contributes to his mystique. Unlike many villains, his actions are not the result of trauma, injustice, or revenge. He was simply born exceptional, with intelligence and spiritual power far beyond ordinary soul reapers. His rise in the Soul Society was rapid, reflecting both his innate abilities and his keen understanding of hierarchy and influence. Early on, Aizen demonstrated an ability to anticipate others' decisions, manipulate situations, and remain unflustered in crises. These traits allowed him to attain the position of captain of the 5th Division at a relatively young age. However, even among captains, he was exceptional, and his presence hinted at an underlying ambition that would later reshape the universe. Aizen's isolation is different from that of typical villains. He isn't lonely because he was rejected. He is isolated because he is superior. Others cannot match his intellect or his composure, which naturally creates a gap between him and his peers. In his mind, the world is limited by the weakness of those who accept tradition and authority unquestioningly. He recognizes the constraints placed upon soul reapers and views them as artificial barriers to true evolution. This perspective forms the foundation of his later rebellion against the Soul Society and the Soul King. His genius is coupled with an unrelenting drive to transcend rather than simply succeed. Unlike other antagonists whose motivations are emotional or personal, Aizen is motivated by philosophical clarity. He views the Soul Society's rules and the authority of the Soul King as flawed constructs designed to maintain mediocrity. To him, conventional morality is irrelevant. The only measure of worth is strength and intelligence. This detachment allows him to manipulate others without guilt, as he believes his vision for the world is inherently superior. Even friendships, alliances, and loyalties are tools to be used rather than sacred bonds. Aizen's moral detachment elevates him from mere villainy to a figure whose presence questions the very nature of right and wrong. His rise through the ranks of the Gotei 13 is emblematic of his strategic brilliance. He does not seek attention or flaunt his abilities. Instead, he quietly acquires power and information, positioning himself to strike when the moment is perfect. This patience and foresight are crucial to understanding his later betrayal. By operating behind the scenes, Aizen ensures that his influence extends far beyond his immediate presence. Even those closest to him underestimate his capacity for manipulation. His genius lies not only in his power, but in his ability to shape events years in advance, making him effectively untouchable. Ultimately, Aizen's early life sets the stage for his transformation. There is no singular trauma or turning point. His superiority is natural, almost inherent. From the very beginning, he exhibits qualities that set him apart from every other character: intellect, composure, and philosophical detachment. These traits create the foundation for the man who will eventually challenge gods, manipulate entire organizations, and control reality itself. Understanding Aizen's origins is crucial to understanding why he never needed emotional motivations or flashy theatrics. He was always playing a game far beyond the reach of anyone around him. Aizen's betrayal of the Soul Society is one of the most iconic moments in anime history. For years, he maintained the appearance of a loyal, humble captain, earning the trust of both his allies and the audience. By faking his death during the confrontation with Rukia, he manipulated every observer into believing he had been eliminated. This move created chaos in the Soul Society, forcing captains and subordinates to act in panic and confusion. When he finally revealed the truth, it was a dramatic and philosophical statement. The system that everyone trusted so implicitly had no real control. He demonstrated that perception, loyalty, and authority could all be manipulated with intelligence and patience. Aizen's betrayal was not merely a shocking twist. It was a meticulous orchestration spanning decades. He had been planning it from the moment he joined the Soul Society, using his calm demeanor to lull others into complacency. Every promotion, every mission, and every interaction was a step toward his ultimate goal. By the time he revealed his deception, he had already secured the tools, allies, and knowledge necessary to operate unhindered. His betrayal is unique because it succeeds without brute force. It succeeds because he understands human psychology, organizational flaws, and the limitations of perception. The elegance of this betrayal sets him apart from conventional villains who rely on destruction or intimidation. Aizen's manipulation extends beyond individuals to the structure of the Soul Society itself. By faking his death and controlling information, he forces captains to question their judgments, creating internal conflict. This chaos weakens the institution that once seemed unshakable, demonstrating that Aizen's power is not just physical, but structural. He effectively breaks the system from within, showing that a superior mind can triumph over rank, experience, and raw power. His betrayal also demonstrates his patience and timing. He strikes at the precise moment when the chaos will yield the greatest advantage. Philosophically, the betrayal reinforces Aizen's worldview. He does not operate out of malice, but out of the belief that the system is flawed and must be corrected. By exposing the Soul Society's vulnerability, he validates his own superiority and challenges others to see the truth of their limitations. He positions himself as inevitable, untouchable, and above the rules that govern ordinary beings. This aspect of his betrayal elevates him from a mere antagonist to a conceptual force, a character whose existence challenges the very foundations of the world around him. Finally, the betrayal is a narrative masterstroke. It changes the stakes of the story permanently, showing that one character can manipulate perception, power, and loyalty simultaneously. Aizen doesn't just alter events, he forces everyone to confront their own limitations. By orchestrating this betrayal, he cements his status as a villain whose influence dominates the story, making him both terrifying and fascinating. Even after his defeat, the shadow of his manipulation remains, proving that Aizen's actions have consequences far beyond any single battle. Aizen's Zanpakutō, Kyoka Suigetsu, is arguably the most overpowered weapon in Bleach. Its ability, complete hypnosis, manipulates all 5 senses of anyone who sees its release, including sight, sound, smell, touch, and even spiritual perception. Once a target has observed the release, Aizen can control their perception indefinitely. Enemies attacking him might believe they are landing blows when in reality they are striking empty air. Allies might see illusions of entire landscapes, enemies, or events that never occurred. In battle, this ability makes Aizen nearly untouchable, as opponents cannot trust anything they experience. Even the most skilled captains can be tricked, which makes him terrifying on both a tactical and psychological level. The true genius of Kyoka Suigetsu is its subtlety. Aizen doesn't need to rely on brute force. He can defeat entire squads with perception alone. The ability is passive and omnipresent once activated, meaning he can control battles without revealing his presence or power. Even strategic planning becomes useless against him because opponents cannot trust what they see or sense. This makes Kyoka Suigetsu not just a weapon, but a battlefield-altering force. Its effect transcends normal combat mechanics, giving Aizen near-complete dominance over any engagement. By controlling perception, he effectively dictates the pace and outcome of battles before they begin. Kyoka Suigetsu also demonstrates Aizen's mastery of patience. He can activate it at the perfect moment and allow events to unfold according to his plan. Even seemingly chaotic situations play into his hands because the illusions keep enemies uncertain and reactive. This makes him a master manipulator, capable of exploiting hesitation, doubt, and misjudgment in real time. Opponents are not just physically disadvantaged, they are mentally compromised, a condition from which few can recover. The power of Kyoka Suigetsu makes traditional measures of strength irrelevant. In essence, Aizen can win fights without ever touching his enemies, simply by controlling their reality. Aizen's use of Kyoka Suigetsu reflects his philosophy of superiority. He doesn't rely on force because intelligence and control are inherently more powerful. His Zen-like composure allows him to manage multiple illusions and plans simultaneously, making him appear omniscient. Even experienced Shinigami captains who excel in combat and strategy find themselves outmatched because they cannot perceive reality accurately. This renders conventional teamwork almost useless, as each participant's perception is compromised. By exploiting these weaknesses, Aizen demonstrates that mastery of perception can surpass mastery of strength. He turns battles into psychological games where the outcome is already predetermined. Finally, Kyoka Suigetsu cements Aizen's status as a villain who broke anime. Unlike other overpowered characters who rely on overwhelming force, Aizen's power invalidates the very rules of engagement. Every fight, every strategy, every defensive measure becomes meaningless once perception is controlled. This makes him not only unpredictable, but also fundamentally unfair in a way that feels logical within the story. Kyoka Suigetsu is not just an ability. It is a statement about Aizen's genius, patience, and philosophical dominance. Through it, he transcends ordinary combat, establishing him as a villain who operates on an entirely different plane. Aizen's ambition extends beyond manipulation and strategy. He desires evolution. The Hogyoku, a mysterious artifact capable of granting the user's deepest desires, becomes central to his plans. By merging with it, Aizen begins transcending the natural limits of both Shinigami and Hollows. His transformations become increasingly godlike, altering both appearance and spiritual essence. Each new form reflects not just raw power, but an unshackling from mortal constraints. The Hogyoku amplifies his intellect and control, enhancing his already formidable abilities. Through it, Aizen seeks ultimate transcendence, moving beyond the constraints of the Soul Society and the natural order itself. This merging also reflects Aizen's philosophical drive. Power for him is never an end, but a means to perfection. The Hogyoku allows him to bypass traditional evolutionary boundaries, reshaping himself according to his will. He no longer needs to rely on conventional battles, illusions, or strategy. He becomes a force of nature. Even the strongest captains find themselves struggling against a being that adapts and evolves continuously. Each evolution makes Aizen less human and more godlike, challenging the concept of what it means to be alive. The Hogyoku is both a tool and a reflection of his ultimate goal, to rewrite existence itself. Importantly, the Hogyoku also demonstrates Aizen's patience and control. Unlike other characters who would rush to use such a power for conquest or destruction, Aizen integrates it into decades-long planning. He allows events to unfold, exploiting chaos and uncertainty while silently growing stronger. His mastery over the Hogyoku showcases his genius. He doesn't just possess power, he maximizes it with strategy and foresight. By carefully controlling his evolution, he ensures that each form and ability serves a specific purpose in his ultimate plan. In doing so, he maintains the philosophical and tactical superiority that defines his character. The transformations granted by the Hogyoku also amplify his Kyoka Suigetsu illusions. As his spiritual energy grows, so does the scale and precision of his control over perception. He can manipulate larger groups, more powerful opponents, and even the battlefield itself with increasing efficiency. The Hogyoku makes him less dependent on conventional combat and more reliant on his intellect and planning. Combined with Kyoka Suigetsu, this makes him nearly invincible in strategy, perception, and adaptability. Opponents are forced to confront a being who is always several steps ahead, constantly evolving and always in control. Finally, the Hogyoku underscores why Aizen never needs his Bankai. Even in his base form, Kyoka Suigetsu and the Hogyoku provide him with unmatched power, perception, and adaptability. Revealing his Bankai would be redundant. His ability to control, manipulate, and evolve is already sufficient to dominate any situation. This restraint demonstrates Aizen's intelligence and his understanding of psychological warfare. He never needs to show his full strength because he has already broken the rules of combat. The Hogyoku solidifies his status as a character who transcends limitations, achieving levels of power and strategy that make traditional measures of strength almost meaningless. Aizen's philosophical conflict with the Soul King is central to his character. The Soul King is the linchpin of the universe, maintaining the balance between the living world, soul society, Hueco Mundo, and hell. Yet despite this central role, the Soul King is weak, mutilated, and imprisoned, more a tool than a ruler. To Aizen, a universe maintained by such a powerless entity is intolerable. He views the Soul King not as a divine figure, but as a symbol of the flawed system that governs all life. This is why Aizen doesn't simply want power. He wants to replace the Soul King and correct what he sees as cosmic injustice. Aizen's disdain for the Soul King is not personal, but philosophical. He recognizes the futility and vulnerability of a universe reliant on a being incapable of independent action. The Soul Society enforces laws, hierarchy, and tradition in the name of maintaining balance, but Aizen sees these as artificial constraints masking weakness. By exposing the system's flaws and seeking to overthrow its linchpin, he challenges the very structure of reality. His rebellion is intellectual as much as it is physical. He wants to prove that strength, intelligence, and willpower define authority, not birthright or tradition. In this way, Aizen's goal is as much about ideology as it is about conquest. Interestingly, this philosophy makes Aizen's villainy unique. He is not motivated by vengeance, cruelty, or ambition for its own sake. He does not wish to destroy the world, only to restructure it under his vision of order and perfection. This elevates him from a conventional antagonist to a conceptual force, representing evolution, intellect, and inevitability. The Soul King symbolizes a system that tolerates mediocrity, and Aizen represents its corrective, ruthless, patient, and inevitable. Every action he takes against the Soul Society or the King is carefully calculated to advance this philosophical vision. Even the Soul Society itself becomes a reflection of his intellect. By manipulating captains, subordinates, and battles, Aizen exposes how fragile the system is when faced with true genius. His disdain is not just for the Soul King, but for all who accept the system without question. Aizen demonstrates that ultimate power lies not in hierarchy or ritual, but in understanding and exploiting the truth of reality. By aspiring to replace the Soul King, he positions himself as a being beyond the moral, social, and spiritual rules that govern ordinary existence. Ultimately, Aizen's conflict with the Soul King highlights his core character trait, transcendence. He seeks not just strength or control, but evolution beyond all limits, including divine authority. In his mind, overthrowing the Soul King is a natural step in achieving perfection and correcting a universe that he perceives as flawed. This philosophical depth sets him apart from other villains, making him as terrifying ideologically as he is physically. It is this combination of intellect, ambition, and philosophical clarity that solidifies his place as one of anime's most unforgettable antagonists. One of the most remarkable aspects of Aizen is that he never uses his Bankai. In the Bleach universe, a Bankai is the pinnacle of a Zanpakutō's power, yet Aizen achieves godlike dominance without ever revealing his. This demonstrates not weakness, but confidence and psychological mastery. By withholding his Bankai, he maintains a constant threat. His opponents never know the true limits of his power. This uncertainty amplifies fear, hesitation, and doubt, key tools in Aizen's arsenal. It's a deliberate choice that reflects his understanding of perception as power. Aizen's restraint also emphasizes his reliance on Kyoka Suigetsu. Complete hypnosis alone allows him to control perception and manipulate battles on a massive scale. His opponents, unable to trust their senses, cannot mount effective attacks or coordinate strategies. Because Kyoka Suigetsu already provides near-absolute battlefield control, using a Bankai becomes unnecessary. It is a testament to his genius that he can dominate without resorting to what is traditionally considered the ultimate Shinigami power. His Bankai, while presumably formidable, would be redundant in his carefully orchestrated system of manipulation and control. The decision to never reveal his Bankai is also psychological warfare. By keeping it hidden, Aizen creates an aura of limitless potential. Allies and enemies alike are forced to imagine what he might be capable of, which reinforces his dominance without a single display of raw force. It is a subtle but brilliant tactic. Fear of the unknown is often more effective than confrontation with the known. In this way, Aizen extends his mastery over perception beyond illusions into anticipation, intimidation, and narrative control. He wins battles in the mind long before they occur. Moreover, Aizen's avoidance of Bankai reflects his philosophical principles. He does not seek unnecessary confrontation or flashy demonstrations. He seeks control, evolution, and inevitability. Every action is calculated, including what he chooses not to use. By holding back his ultimate weapon, he demonstrates supreme confidence in both his intelligence and his existing powers. This restraint reinforces his image as a villain operating on an entirely different plane. Unlike other characters who escalate for spectacle, Aizen proves that true power can be subtle, deliberate, and terrifyingly effective. Finally, the never-used Bankai strengthens Aizen's legacy. Fans and characters alike are left to speculate about its potential, which adds to his mystique. His dominance is not dependent on overwhelming power, but on mastery of perception, evolution, and strategic thinking. Even without using it, the Bankai represents a threshold he does not need to cross, because he has already broken the conventional rules of combat. In this sense, Aizen becomes more than a character. He becomes an idea, a being whose potential is unknowable, his dominance absolute, and his threat eternal. Aizen's return in the Thousand-Year Blood War arc is a masterclass in narrative dominance. Even after being imprisoned for decades, his re-emergence is immediate and commanding. He is no longer a subtle manipulator behind the scenes. He now operates openly, directing battles with surgical precision. His involvement is critical to the war against the Quincy's, proving that his intellect and power remain unmatched. Despite years of confinement, Aizen retains full mastery over Kyoka Suigetsu and the Hogyoku, allowing him to manipulate both enemies and allies to his advantage. His return highlights his strategic genius. Aizen does not rush into battle recklessly. He analyzes, predicts, and positions himself to maximize advantage. He can control engagements on a massive scale, influencing entire battlefields with perception and illusions. His understanding of human and Shinigami psychology allows him to exploit hesitation and fear with surgical accuracy. Even the strongest captains are forced to reckon with his presence, as he reshapes the conflict simply by entering it. His return demonstrates that his strength is not only in raw ability, but in timing, foresight, and manipulation. One of the most striking aspects of his Blood War involvement is that he continues to never reveal his Bankai. This choice emphasizes that Aizen's real power lies in intellect and perception rather than raw output. Even when confronted with powerful enemies who might theoretically challenge him, he relies on patience, strategy, and Kyoka Suigetsu to dominate. This restraint underscores the psychological component of his character. He can control, evolve, and manipulate without ever showing his full hand. Aizen's Bankai remains the ultimate unknown, reinforcing the narrative tension and mystery surrounding him. His return also reasserts his philosophical dominance. He operates not out of revenge or chaos, but out of a clear intellectual goal to challenge the natural order, the soul society, and the limits of evolution. Even after decades of imprisonment, he exhibits the same composure, foresight, and superiority that defined his earlier exploits. Aizen is not merely participating in the war, he is shaping it, demonstrating that even a defeated villain can remain the central axis around which events revolve. His actions remind everyone that intellect and strategy can surpass raw strength, even in a world of gods and monsters. Finally, Aizen's Blood War return cements his legacy as a villain who transcends time and narrative conventions. He is both feared and respected, a godlike figure whose dominance is undeniable. By combining intellect, strategy, Kyoka Suigetsu, Hogyoku evolution, and psychological mastery, he remains untouchable, even without using his Bankai. His presence changes the stakes of the story permanently, reinforcing the idea that Aizen is more than a character. He is a force of inevitability, an anomaly who defines the world around him. In this sense, his return is not just a comeback. It is a reaffirmation of why he broke anime,